let's talk about lactose intolerance, what it is, and how it's different from a true milk allergy, which is a very real thing. Starting with the chemistry, lactose is a sugar naturally found in milk and dairy products. It is a two-ring molecule made up of one glucose and one galactose. Humans can't absorb lactose normally, but we can absorb glucose and galactose via the SGLT1 transporters in our small intestines. In order to do this, we have a gene that encodes the lactase enzyme, which breaks down the lactose molecule into the individual glucose and galactose components. So even though we can't absorb the big molecule, we can absorb the smaller ones. This allows us to drink milk, cleave lactose in two, and reap the nutritional benefits. This is actually a pretty recent evolution in human history, only happening sometime in the past 10,000 to 20,000 years. Our mammalian ancestors actually had no need to be able to digest milk products after being weaned off of breastfeeding. So the ability to tolerate milk products was actually supposed to disappear by the time that we reached adulthood. Except somewhere along the way, we had some freaks start drinking out of cow udders and making stuff like cheese and yogurt, and then those things were delicious enough to become added to our regular diets over the centuries in certain cultures, so the greater ability to digest lactose eventually became part of the gene pool. But if you're one of those primitive ancestors, or just someone who's been told that they're lactose intolerant, then you don't get to enjoy things like milkshakes or provolone without suffering some gassy consequences. Because you lack the gene that encodes the lactase enzyme, and so you just don't make any, or make a reduced amount. In this case, the lactose ends up passing by your small intestine without being broken down or absorbed, and travels down your large intestine where it meets up with the normal gut bacteria that you have in your colon. Your gut flora usually don't have to deal with full lactose molecules, but when they do, they'll start breaking it down in a process called fermentation, which is going to create gases like hydrogen and carbon dioxide as byproducts. This sudden increase of gases in your gut is what triggers the common symptoms of lactose intolerance that you may be familiar with: nausea, bloating, flatulence, abdominal pain, etc. This is where pills like lactaid come in handy, which are essentially just prepackaged lactase enzymes. This gives you enough lactase to tolerate eating that ice cream sandwich and break down the lactose molecules. Once it gets cleaved into individual glucose and galactose in your small intestine, it gets absorbed, and you don't have to worry about it making its way down to your gut bacteria to screw around with you. In contrast to all of this, milk allergy, technically cow milk protein allergy, is a straight up allergic reaction to the proteins commonly found in dairy products. This is usually identified in the first year of life and happens through IgE or T-cell response mechanisms depending on the type, much in the way a bee sting or poison ivy reaction works. Symptoms can range from bloody stools to chronic diarrhea to full-on anaphylactic reactions, so this one is less of an intolerance and more like you need to avoid cow's milk products at all costs because you're actually allergic to the casein or whey, and you will damage your digestive system and develop nutritional deficiencies if you leave this untreated. In the developed world, we see this in about 2 to 3% of all newborns, but luckily the condition is usually self-limiting and resolves spontaneously in over 90% of cases by age 6. You really just need to educate the parents about keeping a dairy-free environment in the home and making sure that they're keeping up on top of things because of how disastrous the consequences can be. For breastfeeding mothers, this means that they also need to be put on a cow milk-free diet, no cheese, milk, butter, whatever, so that they can provide their baby with the breast milk that won't trigger the reaction. Otherwise, there's also extra hydrolyzed formula alternatives, which is probably easier for everyone involved, since this is a battle mostly fought on the environment end. Anyway, I'm not a pediatrician, so I feel like my expertise ends here, but that's about all I remember about CMPA from med school.